We are seeing in Italy a descent towards fascism.
If there's one thing the far right seems to be good at, it's elevating middle-aged men who see themselves as tough guys and love the sound of their own voices.
We're building the wall, politically.
You all laughed at me. You're not laughing now, are you?
In Italy, the birthplace of modern fascism, this has led to one of the country's most influential politicians being accused of inciting serious violence.
Essentially hunting out African migrants.
And facing actual kidnapping charges.
What do you say to people who call you a racist?
No, we just want to live in peace.
My name's Tim Hume and I cover the far right in Europe. I've reported from Italy where a populist politician's scaremongering over immigration unleashed a wave of anti-black racism. In February 2018, Luca Traini, a 28-year-old Italian neo-Nazi, went on a 2-hour shooting rampage through the city of Macerata. He deliberately targeted people of African descent, seriously wounding 6 people. Traini made a fascist salute before he was arrested. When police searched his home, they found a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf and other extreme right material. Traini reportedly told investigators that he had decided to kill them all, referring to African migrants.
The act that was thought to be in retaliation for the arrest of a Nigerian man last week in connection with the murder of an Italian woman.
Traini was clearly a hate-filled extremist, but his crimes didn't happen in a vacuum. Many saw a clear link between the shootings and the intensely anti-migrant climate that had been whipped up by right-wing parties during the ongoing election campaign. In particular, they pointed to the loudest of these voices, Matteo Salvini, a brash former talk radio host and the leader of the right-wing populist Lega party. The same party, as it happens, that the Macerata gunman had previously stood for as a local candidate. Seeking to capitalize on growing concern in Italy over illegal immigration from across the Mediterranean, Salvini campaigned on a hardline Italians First platform.
Prima gli italiani.
Prima gli italiani.
He vowed to close Italy's borders to illegal immigration and repeatedly highlighted crimes by migrants, including the murder that had motivated the gunman in Macerata to carry out his rampage.
He had been on the campaign trail from 2016 to the elections in 2018, and the climate changed. There was a climate of hostility towards migrants, which in 2017 became explicit. Daylight physical aggression, some of them armed, against migrants and people from migrant background.
The relationship between Italy and migrants of African origin, so visible minorities, is a very complex one. First of all, because historically already, historical fascism was instrumentalizing a lot this fear about the black man.
Salvini relentlessly demonized illegal immigrants, labeling them as thieves, rapists, and drug dealers.
It's very funny to hear in the country that invented mafia, to hear that the migrants commit crime.
He said immigrants had turned the country into a huge refugee camp and vowed to deport those there illegally in their hundreds of thousands.
Of course, all those people who maybe before had to hide their racist prejudice or their thinking that they don't want foreigners, now they can claim it. I mean, if Mr. Salvini says it in television, why can't I say it in the street?
But despite warnings that Salvini was unleashing dangerous forces in society, his campaign worked. In 2018, Salvini won the influential role of Interior Minister.
Italy's new Interior Minister used hardline rhetoric to fire up the voters. Now some fear that in power it could lead to a return to some of the darkest days of Italian history.
He was even bold enough to brazenly flirt with the legacy of Italy's fascist past, specifically its most notorious strongman, Benito Mussolini. In 2018, on the anniversary of Mussolini's birth, he tweeted a message to his critics that echoed one of the dictator's famous quotes, writing, "So many enemies, so much honor."
No one really fears that fascism can take over, in the sense fascism in the historical forms that we knew. But there is a shared fear about the hollowing out of the principles of liberal democracy.
Quando mi danno del sovranista e del populista mi fanno solo dei complimenti.
Rabid anti-fascism that we're seeing today, he said, against a fascism that no longer exists, is nothing more than a deliberate distraction on the part of the establishment.
Once in power, Salvini didn't let up, issuing taunting threats to migrants at huge rallies and introducing tough new rules on migration. During the European migration crisis, charities started sending out rescue ships to save migrants on unseaworthy boats from drowning in the Mediterranean. Salvini waged a relentless campaign to stop these boats bringing rescued migrants to Italy.
Interior Minister Matteo Salvini says it's a matter of national security.
Le ONG sono un problema e aiutano i trafficanti di esseri umani.
In August 2019, a boat saved more than 100 migrants and asked to dock in Italy in accordance with maritime law. But Salvini refused. Migrants, including unaccompanied children, were trapped on board for nearly 3 weeks in deteriorating conditions. Salvini is now facing kidnapping charges for his orders that trapped the rescued migrants on the ship against their will. But he's remained completely unrepentant. He insists that he's not a criminal or a racist, but simply a true patriot, defending his country against illegal immigration.
He has flaunted his everyman image on social media while all but shutting Italy's doors to migrants.
But black people throughout Italy say his inflammatory rhetoric unleashed an unprecedented wave of racism and hostility towards them, regardless of their immigration status.
There's a climate of legitimate, open, uncontrolled stigmatizing, name-calling of migrants and so on. There was a climate of a kind of legitimized public expression of hate.
I went to Milan in 2018 to speak to black Italians about the radically changed racial climate in their country. Time and again, they told me that Salvini's anti-migrant campaigning was to blame for mainstreaming racist hate against people of African descent. They say it emboldened people to publicly express bigoted views, insults, and even attack them in a way they'd rarely experienced before.
Migrants are not dangerous. Migrants are in danger. And we have everyday cases of people walking in the street and seeing a migrant and attacking him.
In some of the attacks on black people, the attackers even invoked Salvini by name, reportedly telling the victims, "This is Salvini's country." Salvini also drew support from far-right fringe groups like Casa Pound, a fascist movement whose members have attacked minorities.
Dobbiamo far sostituire dalla massa di immigrati che sta arrivando dall'Africa.
Casa Pound and other fascist groups like Forza Nuova were massively emboldened by Salvini's rise to power, as he took their brand of xenophobic politics to an entirely new level. And experts say that Salvini's hardline anti-migrant rhetoric has shifted Italian politics to the right on matters like immigration.
Or these neo-Nazis group, neo-fascist group, started using migrants as, I would say, electoral fuel.
The major impact of the far right in Italy has been to radicalize the position of more mainstream parties on issues like immigration and security.
Salvini's popularity has built steadily over the 14 months.
Viva Salvini!
Salvini tried to exploit his party's soaring strength in the polls to trigger a snap election and become prime minister. The gambit failed. But while Salvini is no longer a powerful government minister, his party continues to top the polls, and he clearly covets the country's top job as much as ever. For black Italians, the fear is that as soon as he returns to campaign mode, it will send another wave of racism surging their way.
The impact that it had on public opinion and public debates will not be washed out. And this is what happens very often with far-right campaigns. They lose in practical terms, and in this case, in front of the justice, but they leave a strong cultural legacy.